Nun bet Amud Aleph. Started? Nun bet Amud Aleph. 2 lines from the top. The Savri Bet Shammai. So we said, the Savri Bet Shammai, the Berachot Hayom Adifa, does Bet Shammai really hold that you bless the day before the wine? Tanya, we have a Braita that says, Anichnas lebeto b'motzei Shabbat. Somebody comes to his house on Motzei Shabbat. Mevarech al hayayin ve'al ha'maor. He blesses on the wine and then the fire and then the besamim. V'achar kach omer avdala. And then he says avdala last. V'imeno ha'el ha'kos echad. But if he only has one kos, menicho la'achar ha'mazon, he saves it for after Birkat HaMazon. U'men shashan kulan acharav. And then he says all the blessings of avdala after Birkat HaMazon. And who says that really that Bet Shammai holds that way? Dilma Bet Hillel, maybe Bet Hillel holds that way. You can't say that. Because it starts off by saying he blesses on the fire. And who holds that first they bless on the fire and then the besamim? Bet Shammai, Detanya, because the Braita says, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, lo nichleku Bet Shammai u Bet Hillel al Hamazon shebatchila ve'avdala shei basof. Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel don't argue that Mazon comes first and Avdala comes last. Al manichleku, on what did they argue? Al ha'maor ve'al besamim, on the flame, on the fire, and on the order of the fire and on the order of the besamim. Bet Shammai omrim ma'or ve'achar kach besamim. Bet Shammai holds first fire and then besamim. U'bet Hillel omrim lo besamim ve'achar kach ma'or. Umimai de Bet Shammai, and who says that that's really Bet Shammai? Ve'ali b'dei Rabbi Yehuda, and going in accordance to the words of Rabbi Yehuda. Dilma Bet Hillel ve'ali b'dei Rabbi Meir, and maybe we're going in accordance of Rabbi Meir. Don't say that. Why? Because it says in our Mishnah, the order goes ner mazon besamim v'avdala, u'bet Hillel omrim ner besamim mazon v'avdala. They both start off with fire. In this Braita it says, Im en lo ela kos echad, menicho la'achar hamazon, v'shashan kulan la'acharav. That you save them, you do Birkat HaMazon first, and then you do all the other berachot of Havdalah after. Shema Mina, coming here out, the Bet Shammai. Really, it's Bet Shammai. Ve'ali b'dei Rabbi Yehuda, and we go according to Rabbi Yehuda. U'mikol makom kasha, and we're back to our original question, which is why, if according to Bet Shammai they hold first you bless on the day and then on the wine, how come here by Havdalah they're blessing on the wine first? So we're back to the original question. Kasavu Bet Shammai. Shani iluya yoma me'akuka yoma, because the entrance of a day is different from the exiting of a day. What do you mean by that? Yule yoma kama de makdimina le'adif, because when the entrance of a day, the earlier you bring in Shabbat is better, so they rather bless on the day first. Akuka yoma, but the exiting of a day, kama de machrinan le'adif, the more you can push it off is better. Why? Ki hechi delo lehave alan kemasai, so that you shouldn't make it a burden on yourself. You're showing Hashem, look, Shabbat came out and I'm not taking it out right away. I'm first blessing on the wine, I'm first blessing on the besamim, I'm blessing on everything else. After I bless on Avdalah, and I'm separating the Shabbat to the mundane day. So here I'm pushing it off as much as I can. V'savri Bet Shammai hold Birkat HaMazon, v'savri Bet Shammai Birkat HaMazon teuna kos. Does Bet Shammai really hold that Birkat HaMazon requires a cup, meaning to do Birkat HaMazon on a glass of wine? V'hatnan, we had our Mishnah said, Balahem yain nachar HaMazon, somebody brought in front of him a glass of wine before Birkat HaMazon. Imen sham ela oto kos, if he only has that one cup of wine, Bet Shammai omrim mevarech al hayayin, v'achar kach mevarech al hamazon. First you bless on the wine and then you do Birkat HaMazon. My love, de mevarech alayo v'shati lei, does it not mean that he's blessing on it to drink from it and then doing Birkat HaMazon? The Gemara says, lo, de mevarech alayo manichlei. He's blessing on it and putting it to the side. So what that we said right now, we're trying to give a tirutz. We're trying to say that, didn't we say that in our Mishnah states that first you're going to say a bracha on the wine, and then you're going to drink it, and then you're going to do Birkat HaMazon. So he's saying, no, what it means is that he's going to say a bracha on the borei pri hagefen, and then put the glass of wine aside. But how could he do such a thing? Somebody who says a bracha on a certain thing, you need a taste from it. You can't just say a bracha and not do anything with it. So the Gemara says, you're right, he tried a little bit of it. But the master said, Tamo pagmo, somebody who tastes from a cup of wine, you're pogem the wine now, you can't use it now again, because it's pagum wine. So the Gemara answers, you're right. So what did he do? He tasted a little bit in his hand, he poured a little bit of the wine in his hand, and therefore there is no problem from drinking it. But the master said, Kos shel bacha tzarich shiur. You said a kosher bacha needs a revi'it, and now that he poured it out a little bit, he has less than a revi'it. So how could he do such a thing? So the Gemara says no. He had a little bit. He had more than a shiur. והא אם אין שם אלא אותו כוס קטני, but it was written that he only had אותו כוס. It sounds like he only had 1 cup of wine. How could you tell me he had more? Trei lo have, you're right. He didn't have 2, because we said kos echad ktani. Trei lo have umechad nafish, but he had more than 1. He didn't have 2, but he had more than 1. So he had 1 chad v'chetzi, and even if he poured a little bit, it was still fine. Ve'atani Rabbi Chia, but Rabbi Chia says, בית שמאי אומרים מברך על היין ושותוהו, ואחר כך מברך ברכת המזון. And then he blesses ברכת המזון. So according to the words of Rabbi Chia state clearly that he says baracha on the yain before berkat hamazon, drinks from it, and then does berkat hamazon. So how are you telling me this sipurei safta that he's pouring it in his hands and then drinking? It literally says clearly that before berkat hamazon he blesses on it, he drinks from it and then does berkat hamazon. Rather, what we say is trei tanai ve'aliba de Bet Shammai. We have 2 tanaim that argue on the opinion of Bet Shammai. According to Rabbi Chia, he says you're right. You say berkat hamazon, you say borei pri hagefen before, and then you do berkat hamazon. To do berkat hamazon is not requiring the kos of yain. You can do it even before. And according to the second one arguing on Bet Shammai, he's saying no. You need to keep this glass of wine for berkat hamazon, and therefore, if you want to say a bracha before, only pour a little bit into your hand and keep the glass of wine for berkat hamazon. Bet Shammai אומרים נוטלים לידיים and then מוזגים את הכוס, נכון? So we see that's what it said in the Mishnah. תנו הבנה. Bet Shammai אומרים נוטלים לידיים ואחר כך מוזגים את הכוס. First we do נטילת ידיים and then we pour the cup of wine. Why? שאם אתה אומר מוזגים את הכוס, because if you're going to say that first we pour the glass of wine, תחילה, that we do it first, גזירה שמא יתמו משכין שאחורי הכוס מחמת ידיו, maybe the cup of wine was tameh, נכון? And now that he just did netilah first, he's going to touch if he touches the glass of wine before, meaning if he grabs the glass of wine before without doing netilah, the glass was wet, when he poured the wine in the water, it had a little bit of wetness to it.
His hands, yeah.
Now his hands became.
No, his hands were. If he didn't let it down before, his hands
are going to be tameh
to the cup, and then it's going to be fully cooked. Yeah.
So maybe without the water, maybe without the wetness, Rashi says, even without wetness from the cup, maybe it should be, if the cup is already tameh, maybe it should be metameh his hands without wetness, without water. Yadayim shnioten. But we said no, yadayim shnioten. Ve'en sheni oseh shlishi bechulin. Ela al yedei mashkin. And you need something wet in order to be making a secondary needs to make a third tameh. You need water involved.
Yeah.
ובית הלל אומרים לא, מוסגים את הכוס ואחר כך נותנים לידיים. And בית הלל say no, first we pour the cup of wine and then we do נטילת ידיים. Why? שאם אתה אומר נותנים לידיים תחילה, because if you're going to say first we do נטילת ידיים first, גזירה שמא יתמו משכין שבידיים מחמת הכוס, because maybe the משכין שבידיים are going to be טמא from the cup, ויחזור ויתמו את הידיים, and now that he did netilat yadayim first, his hands are going to be wet from the netilat yadayim. Now he touches the outside of the kos. Ve'itmu kos v'nitmi kos yadayim. Maybe the cup should make the hands tameh right away. And kli metameh adam, but a kli can be metameh adam. Ve'nitmi lemashkin shebetochon. Maybe it should be metameh the actual inside. Hacha bekli shenitmu achorav b'mashkin askin. Achorav b'mashkin askinan. No, we're talking about something that was only metameh the outside and not the inside. The tochot tahor vegabot tameh, because the inside is tahor and the outside is tameh. The Tanan, we have the Mishnah that states kli shenitmeu achorav b'mashkin achorav tmeim. Something that the outside of it was tameh, the outside of it is tameh. Tocho ve'ogno ve'ozno ve'adav torim, but the inside of it, the handle, the trim, the ear, all these parts of the kos are tahor. נטמא תוכו, נטמא כולו, but if נטמא תוכו, נטמא כולו. But if the inside was tameh, then the whole cup becomes tameh. במאי כמפלגי, so what are they arguing on? בית שמאי סברי, אסור להשתמש בכלי שנטמאו אחוריו במשכין. בית שמאי hold that you're never allowed to use a cup that was tameh from beforehand. Meaning the cup is never allowed to be used to be tameh from before. גזירה משום נציצות. Why? Because maybe if you touch it, נכון? And because the cup is tameh, little nitzotot, drops of water are going to go inside and be metameh the whole glass. וליקה למגזר שמא יטמו המשכין שבידיים בכוס. Therefore, וליקה למגזר שמא יטמו המשכין שבידיים בכוס. Therefore, they hold that you do netira first. Why? Since you're never allowed to use a cup that was tameh to begin with, according to Bet Shammai, we tell you do netirat yadayim first, because maybe your hands were tameh, right? So if your hands were tameh, you do netira first, because there's
drops of water might mix with a tuma, and then you're pouring into a
since
a cup.
according to Bet Shammai, you're never allowed to use a cup that's tameh. The only thing we're scared of is if your hands are tameh, because you're never allowed to use a cup that's tameh to begin with. So therefore, start with netirat yadayim so that your hands become pure, and therefore, when you touch a glass of wine, you'll never have the problem of tuma wine because the glass has to always be pure. ובית הלל סברי לא, מותר להשתמש בכלי שנטמו אחוריו במשכין. You're allowed to use a cup of wine that has a secondary tuma. אמרי ניצוצות לא שכיחי. Why? Because we don't worry about these drops of water. ואיכא למיכו שמא יטמו משכין שבידיים מחמת הכוס. And maybe the wetness of your hands will be metameh the kos. נכון? From the kos. דעה אחרת, תקף לנדיניים סעודה. Right after נטילת ידיים, you need to have a סעודה. מהי דבר אחר? הכי כאמר לו בית הלל לבית שמאי. This is what בית הלל said to בית שמאי. לדידייכו דאמרת אסור להשתמש בכלי שאחוריו טמאים דגזרין על משום נציצות, because you hold of נציצות, right? Why aren't you allowed to use a secondary glass of wine according to בית שמאי? Because you're scared that maybe drops of wine are going to go into the cup of wine and it'll make, if the cup was tameh, נכון? And you grab it, אתה שומע? אם הכוס היה tameh ואתה נוגע בו, נכון? הם מפחדים ש drops of water are going to go inside. Drops of tuma water are going to go inside the wine and then it's going to make the whole thing tameh. אף על פי כן, העדיפה דתקיף לנטילת ידיים סעודה. Even though according to you guys you're scared of drops of water going inside, what we said is adif. Why? Because there's a thing that says take it for right after netilat yadayim comes seudah. So you're saying first let's do netilat yadayim and then let's do pouring the glass and then we'll do a motziv. Why? Because we're scared that maybe if your hands were tameh, you're going to touch the glass of wine and your hands are going to be wet with the glass of wine and it's going to make the drops of water go into the glass of wine and it's going to make it tameh. According to you, it's beautiful that you don't want to but right after netilat yadayim needs to come a motzi. You need to do Hamotzi, and what you guys are doing is doing an in-between thing. So according to us, don't worry about, even if the cup is tameh, you're still allowed to use it because we don't worry about netzitzot, and right after comes netilat yadayim.